I don't know how to take it now that he's not a fat guy. You know, you really think he's gonna fight Fury?
I would love it. I would love it.
And he's not past his prime. Savage, I'm gonna tell you something.
Yes, people. I am Savage Dan.
I'm Paulie Malignaggi.
You are watching Mouthpiece, the official boxing podcast.
We are two of the most knowledgeable, two of the most charismatic, biggest personality guys in boxing, and we are two of the coolest cats talking about the sport today.
Welcome back to Mouthpiece. I am Savage Dan, and today, before we start, I would like to give a special shout out to Chelsea Football Club, who beat Liverpool, and by the time this episode comes out, we'll probably have beaten Everton as well. Into the top four we go. Right, straight into boxing. We had a couple of fights this weekend. Clarissa Shields, again, another dominant win, unanimous decision. And it makes her the first undisputed boxer of male or female in two weight classes at the same time in the 4-weight era. That confused me. But basically, it makes her the best.
Yeah.
And one of the best ever.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got to give her credit. I mean, clearly she's the best female fighter in the world. She's shown a lot of wrinkles to her game, and I think she continues to get better. And she's beating them some of the top female contenders in her weight classes rather easily. And so that's, they can't say enough good things about what she's doing and how she's accomplishing it. It's not just what she's accomplishing it's how she's accomplishing it.
Where does that rank her in terms of female boxers all time?
I've said I think she's the best female boxer of all time. I think there was the whole comparison with Layla Ali and all that stuff back in Layla's prime, but I think Layla brought the Ali name, and Layla honestly brought she did learn her craft, and she did learn it pretty well, but Clarissa has that amateur pedigree, the amateur background. She's won the Olympics, so she turned pro with a big pedigree already, and so it kind of gave her the springboard to continue what she's doing now and to continue to even improve. So I think there's just levels and layers to Clarissa that I have not seen in other female fighters of the past. So I'd say she's probably the best female fighter that's today in 2021, all female boxing history. I think she's the best one.
It seems like there's only one more fight to make. The most obvious one is the one between her and Savannah Marshall. She said, whenever or wherever Savannah Marshall wants to fight, I will her up. You're gonna have to beat that, guys. But it's what she said. Yeah. How do you see that fight going if it happens? I think both fighters are probably different from when they fought back in those days. They were both amateurs. I think a lot is made of amateur wins, and I don't think that nothing should be made of amateur wins. But I think also, they're things that come into the conversation and create talking points when two people meet again in the pros. I don't know at what point both of them were when they fought each other as amateurs. I'll say that, but I would say that a lot of people, when that many years pass, a lot changes. People improve in different ways, and people get better in different ways. So I wouldn't put a lot of stock into that result aside from the selling point. Savannah's gonna have to do what she does if she wants to beat Clarissa again. And of course, Clarissa has that kind of a chip on her shoulder because she's accomplishing so much as a pro, and she feels like this is like the only unsettled, unfinished business remaining for her. Right, into the current news. Derrick Chisora seems to be pestering Joseph Parker whenever he can, giving him FaceTime calls. We know that a fight has been agreed between the two. Have you ever experienced anything like this in terms of, just loads and back and forth between you and someone who you're going to fight?
There's been fun trash talking promotions in my career as well, but but today, you know what it is? Today, because of technology, you have more options. You have a lot of options. So I can't say I wasn't really. By the time the FaceTime era began, I don't know that. I still had some time left in my career, but it still wasn't as big of a deal as it is now. With social media and the FaceTime calls and all that stuff, I think those are really really, really a part of society today, and so they can be used to weaponize promotions for fighters and to be try to get an opponent's minds and whatnot. I guess you can kind of play it like Ali showing up to Sonny Liston's gym and going crazy. I guess when you FaceTime somebody today and you start going crazy on the phone, only difference is, while the security had Ali removed from the gym when he did it to Liston, here you can just hang up on the person, I guess.
Yeah. Well, Derrick said he'll just keep calling. It's 1 a.m. over in New Zealand. He said he'll just keep calling.
You've got to put the phone on silent and keep it on the charger, because those constant calls will kill the battery too.
How do you see that fight planning out when it does happen?
I think it's a really good fight, because I was thinking that Chisora was going to be prepared maybe to go and possibly try to attack some kind of title fights, but there's no title fights to really attack at the moment, So I think this is a great fight. It's a perfect recipe. Chisora did reasonably well in his loss to Usyk. I think he overperformed and overachieved in many people's eyes the way they expected that fight to go. So despite him losing, he's shown himself to remain at a formidable level. And Parker, being an ex-champion and being a guy who still competes at a relatively high level, I think it's a nice clash of both boxing styles, as well as two guys who are still at a pretty good level in their careers. And coming together at a good time. The fight really does excite me. The fight has a lot of possible positive vibes to it.
Another heavyweight return is Andy Ruiz Jr., who's going to be fighting Chris Arreola on the 24th of April. I looked at his Instagram post, and I haven't seen him in such good shape ever. I don't think he looked incredible. Andy Ruiz.
No. I know. I don't know. Anytime we're used to seeing somebody have success as a fat guy, though, while it is that rare, I don't know how to take it now that he's not a fat guy. I don't know if that's better or worse. For life in general, not being a fat guy is probably healthier and it's probably good. But as far as a fighter, I got so used to seeing Ruiz successful as a fat guy that I kind of have some questions in my mind now, can he maintain that level not being a fat guy, We'll see. Obviously there was a point where he got too fat for the rematch with AJ, where he couldn't even really move to catch up to an AJ who in my eyes still had a lot of trepidation and fought that fight with trepidation, and he could have created a lot of doubt in AJ's mind had he been able to catch up to him, but he was so fat in the rematch that it actually didn't. He went too far the other way. So I don't know if him going too far one way and now him going too far the other way is the answer, but I'm curious to see if it is. Because like I said, for life,
it's different.
Not being obese for life is a good thing. We'll see if it's a good thing in boxing for
it's
Ruiz
different
as well.
When you're fat and you're slow and you can't move, it's one thing. But when you're fat and you've got fast hands, and sorry, Andy, for calling you fat, I should be calling you something. If you're larger than life, and you're you've got fast hands and you're fit.
That's what I'm saying. There was a target weight. There was like a target larger than life fat weight for Andy where he was good. And when he was at that weight, even though he was fat, he was still good. He was performing. He was getting results. Then came the AJ fight where he got too large. He came in too heavy. And obviously there's a point where even a fat guy can't be too fat and then still have success. But my question is, and maybe we're just making a bigger deal of this than we should. We'll find out when he fights. But my question is losing all of that, is doing this weight training, doing all this, is it going to take away from the speed and some of the other things that you were able to put into your fat style? Is that going to take away from you as a fighter? Is that going to take away qualities and not defects? That's my curiosity about this, and we'll find out.
He's teamed up with the Canelo camp, Garcia as well. Seems like they have a winning strategy over there. So it looks like they're doing things that are going to be adding to his game. As far as him fighting Chris Arreola, I've always seen him as a bit of a gatekeeper. If you beat him, you're decent at least. With the least disrespect that I can possibly give him. But I think Chris Arreola is good. But if you are an elite fighter, you beat him.
Yeah, I think there was a point in Ariola's career where he may have been a little bit better than a gatekeeper, would have probably been a legitimate contender. But I think at this point, for sure, he can be viewed as a gatekeeper type. But you have to keep in mind, there's a derby feel to this mix. You know, there's two Mexican Americans, and so they're from the same culture. There's a Mexican American, like Italian American in the U.S., it has its own culture, and so when two guys come from the same culture, while there is respect, there is also the rivalry that you want to be the best guy on the block. You know, you want to be the best guy in your neighborhood. You know, and so this has world class implications, but it's basically has a derby feel to it. You know, and so because of that, I think the fight becomes better than just your average contender versus gatekeeper fight, in my opinion.
Providing we see a good Andy Ruiz, where do you rank him? Where do we think he ranks? You know, for a long time it almost seemed like there was the top three in the heavyweight division, and then after that there was kind of everyone else.
Yeah, I wouldn't put him in the top three just off of a win. But I will say that Ruiz didn't just come out of nowhere either. I thought Ruiz was a solid top 10, top 15 guy even before he beat AJ. You know, for a lot of people he came out of nowhere because they didn't know him, but he was already beating pretty decent gatekeeper types already before that. I mean, he beat Alexander Dmytrenko right before he beat AJ. You know, Dmytrenko is not exactly, a gimme cupcake. You know, he might be a gatekeeper type, but he isn't exactly a gimme cupcake. And he beat Dmytrenko about 6 weeks before he beat AJ. So I always felt good about Ruiz's standing in the heavyweight division as far as, a solid guy. But to go top three, I don't know right now. I still think you're looking on the outside of the top three. I guess it also depends on how good you look winning if you're able to beat Ariola, and how good you look doing it. And that will give us a better idea of where he belongs or doesn't belong.
Just for clarity, my top three at the time was obviously Fury, AJ, and Wilder. Now it's almost like there's a top two and everyone else. Mm-hmm. Jake Paul seems to be absolutely everywhere right now. I don't know. It doesn't matter what I'm putting on. Yeah. He's everywhere. Yeah. We are hearing that he's being praised highly and rated by his sparring partners, and apparently he has some genuine and real boxing ability. Yeah,
I'm gonna be straight as I always am, because I've not criticized Jake Paul till now, because I feel like he deserves the money that he's getting. Because if you put on a show and you put the butts in the seats and you get the sales, and you deserve to make that money. That's just the way it works. So I don't think anybody should hate on that. So while I've defended him, at this point I'm also going to, probably expose some other things too. The sparring partner's telling you how good he is. It's probably just for promotion. All right, it's probably just for them also, the sparring partners themselves. The sparring partners are world-class fighters, world championship fighters, and they're looking to piggyback off some marketing if they can spar this guy who has tons of views and everything he does. So if you and they probably have a good relationship. Most of my sparring partners, we always have a good relationship. You try to kill each other in sparring, but you always have a good relationship. So you end up becoming cool. And when you become cool with somebody and he's got a little bit of a name, you're gonna obviously overcompensate them in the media if this situation arises. And so for me, Jake Paul's probably decent. Listen, bro, the guy's been boxing 2 years. He can't. It's beyond recognition what he probably really can do and what people think he can do. I understand him as everything. I mean, I understand that today that's all people go with is the perception instead of the reality. So they've in reality made the perception turn into the reality at this point. But I don't know, bro. The guy's been boxing 2 years. I still haven't seen enough of him fight a guy who knows how to fight enough to know if Jake Paul knows how to get from one side of the ring to the other side of the ring in proper fashion. Like if he knows how to walk like a boxer from one side of the ring to the other. That's how bad his opposition has been thus far. So let's not go over the top where we don't even know if the bell rings and Jake's in the ring by himself. If Jake knows how to get from one side of the ring to the other side of the ring without crossing his feet, without by keeping proper balance, without being front foot heavy, without all this. We don't even know that yet. That's how bad the opposition's been. So let's not overplay this either, because you're getting compliments from this kind of level fighter, but then you're fighting a guy who's not even good enough to drive my Uber. You know what I'm saying? Not even good enough. If you call him an Uber driver, like we used to call him in the old days, taxi cab drivers, you're fighting, the taxi cab driver might get offended, like because he's probably better than those opponents too. So I don't think you can put too much stock into fighters saying, oh, this guy is is unbelievable. This guy's unbelievable. You know, listen, I think Jake's got a tremendous marketing team, very, very smart in the way they've made his progression, and really in the way they've marketed and overcompensated his accomplishments thus far. I think it's been brilliant. Even the way he is fighting a guy now who can be deemed as a fighter. You know, he's an ex-UFC fighter, and he, you know, was an All-American wrestler. But we have an All-American wrestler who has terrible, terrible striking skills. I mean, absolutely no striking skills at all. And you're taking away his one thing that he can do, which is the wrestling, by making him box. So I think it's been a brilliant, genius move. And also, he's got a little bit of notoriety. The problem with calling Ben Askren a fighter is you lose the privilege of being called a fighter for life when you get knocked out in less than 3 seconds in a fight. Ben Askren, I don't care what he's accomplished, is not a fighter. You cannot get knocked out in 3 seconds and ever call yourself a fighter again in your life. In your life, that's it. That is permanent, mate. That is permanent, because there's YouTube videos of you getting knocked out in 2.5. When you fit in an Instagram post, not an Instagram IG story, in an Instagram post. Forget about the story. When you're KO, when your fight fits in an Instagram story, in an Instagram post, and you came out on the losing side of it, my guy, that's it.
Yes,
that's it. It's all. You're not a fighter anymore. That's it. You're not a fighter anymore. But brilliant marketing, brilliantly done moves by Jake Paul and his team. But again, if he wins this fight, I think it's going to be overcredited. I expect him to win this fight. Again, Askren at this point cannot be called a fighter anymore. You know,
yeah.
So I think Paul wins the fight. But
it doesn't matter.
Are we buying the reality, or are we buying the perception? Because now the perception and the reality is skewed here. And where does he go from there? Where does he go from there? Because at this point, you beat this guy, what you expect. Where does he go? You can't even fight a journeyman. Nobody knows a journeyman.
Here we go. We've got potentially another feud with Tommy Fury, Tyson Fury's little brother.
You really think he's gonna fight Fury?
I would love it.
I think it's just feuding.
There's something
I don't think he's gonna take that chance. I mean, Tommy's a real fighter.
There's something about
and he's not past his prime.
Jake Paul might be believing his own source here.
Yes,
he
but
may actually start to believe it.
Savage, I'm gonna tell you something. I have no doubt he's believing his own hype. I have no doubt, but he's got people around him that are gonna settle down, son. Settle down. This is where we go. Because at the end of the day, the opposition that they get for him, I mean, it's genius. It really is. It's genius. I mean, you've got people out there that believe Jake Paul can compete against world-class guys. So I think the team he's got around him is genius. They're brilliant. But I'm sure those same geniuses tell him when he comes out of pocket, or when he's thinking he's more than he is. Listen, bro, settle down, simmer down a little bit, simmer down now, and we're gonna get you this guy instead. We're gonna work it this way instead. So I think the Fury thing is nice for promotion. Yeah. It's nice for getting things going. I don't know that he fights that guy. I don't see it.
I don't think so. And if he does, I think it's
because the Fury name is a big deal, but you're not fighting Tyson. But you got the Fury name there, right? Yeah. But you got still a young guy who's in his prime. He's young. He's still got that young energy. Mm-hmm. I think Paul's gonna be looking to get guys he can market his name off of, or his people are gonna look to get guys they can market his name off of without being such a risk. And I think any young fighter is a risk right now, But you don't want to also get journeymen and people that are completely unknown too. So we'll see. I think they're gonna aim towards maybe more retired UFC fighters or MMA fighters who didn't have any much striking skills, and then maybe in time graduate to retired boxers. We'll see.
Right, on this day, or shall I say during this week, March 8th, 1971, we had the legendary fight of the century, Joe Frazier versus Muhammad Ali. Obviously, both of us were not born, so we didn't watch it. Did you did you find yourself going back and watching old school fights as you were growing through the professional ranks? Yeah.
I always had an interest and a passion for boxing and old school fights as well, and especially Ali. I always loved Ali growing up, and especially when I started boxing, I started to really be able to appreciate Ali more as a fighter and not just as the, as when I was a teenager and a kid, it's more like he's a character. I used to like, seeing the old interviews and that. But now, as I became a boxer and I was able to, appreciate his boxing with a different kind of viewpoint, with a different eye than I did before boxing, So I always loved Ali, and I always used to watch a lot of Ali stuff. So the fight is obviously something embedded in any fighter's mind. The fight being the March 8th, 1971, Frazier Ali Frazier 1 fight. I think it was a fight that both was an amazing thing for boxing, but at the same time, because of it, I think that's what caused the obsession over undefeated records and fighters starting to pad their records after, because that promotion was such a major promotion, and it was billed as champion versus champion, O versus O. And ever since then, if you look at boxing prior to that fight, you have guys who are solid world-class fighters, and the records didn't really matter. You still got great fights, and a loss wouldn't kill your career. But if you look at after that fight, you started to see promoters and fans demand to try to re-represent these kind of fights, these O versus O, champion versus champion fights, and they obsess over them to the point where fighters are scared to lose that O because they're scared to ever lose the opportunity to be part of a show like that, And while before that fight, I think you constantly had great fights and the records didn't matter, because when top fighters constantly fight each other, you know what happens? They beat each other. So O's obviously get lost out there. And so fans understood that, the media understood that. But the way it was promoted, the way Ali Frazier 1 was promoted, obviously was done brilliantly, and it was a brilliant fight, which lived up to the hype. So people now try to re-represent this fight all over again. They're trying to rebuild it all over again. You try to, they let fights simmer too much sometimes, to the point where they're like Mayweather Pacquiao simmered way too much, even though Pacquiao wasn't undefeated. I remember 𝘚𝘯𝘮𝘮𝘪𝘮. People were demanding it for a couple of years before they finally got it. Leonard and Hearns, though Leonard took the loss with Duran, they were trying to build it up that way. As a matter of fact, I'll be honest with you, I'm going on a limb. I don't know that Leonard would have fought Hearns at that point had Leonard already not taken the L to Duran, and it was him who had too much to gain by fighting Hearns. I think if it was O versus O, I think Leonard probably takes it a little slower, like he did when he fought Hagler. Made Hagler wait for it, So I think, and that's just my opinion, I think Hearns probably has to wait a little longer for that fight if Leonard doesn't have the L on his record from the Duran fight. But luckily they did fight when they fought, because it was an amazing fight. But nonetheless, I don't want to over talk on the subject, but I think Ali Frazier 1 was an amazing fight. I think it's a fight that is in everyone's mind, but at the same time, is in everyone's mind as a big moment in boxing, a milestone moment in boxing, a key point in boxing, and an amazing fight by two amazing competitors. But not all of that came out of it is positive for boxing, because I think that started the obsession over the O era, and fighters starting to try to realize that they need to avoid certain tough clashes if they want to not put themselves at risk to never be part of a big promotion like that again.
Would you, just following on from that, would you say that a fight, I don't want to say the pressure comes off your shoulders when you do take your first loss, but there is so much kind of banking on it before you do lose your O, that after it, you kind of become almost a little bit fearless?
I wouldn't say that to that degree. Of course, you've got no choice. If you're going to continue your boxing career, you have to now just go for it. But my experience told me this. It wasn't so much the first L, but then once you got the first L, if you got the second L, you're too far away removed from an O to ever be considered that way again. And even after my second L, I accomplished a lot in my career, but I noticed that the way I was being written about, even the way I was being printed in magazines and whatnot, it changed. Yeah. And I understood that, and I realized that. So there is a certain unforgiving trait about that. Granted, you can be Manny Pacquiao and fight for 25 years and make people forget L's that you took 10 years ago, but most guys can't fight 25 years. It's not really natural. so dare I say, but nonetheless, I think that by the average standard, you end up having no choice but to have that pressure lifted off your back, because if you want to continue to have a boxing career, and again I'll give myself as an example. That's the best example I can give. You can still go make a lot of money. You can still set yourself up nicely, but the fact that you realize the chase for that top pound for pound spot, or that chase for that top 3 pound for pound spot, is gone simply because you took a couple of L's. And no matter what you accomplish after this, you'll always be judged on those couple of L's, and so you'll never ever have a chance to be on that on the top 3 pound for pound. I think because of that, you do lose a certain amount of passion at that point. But it doesn't mean you can't make money and can't make a living.
Right, we've got a couple of fights coming up this weekend. Cecilia Braekhus and Jessica McCaskill. That's a big rematch because Cecilia dominated. Her, right? Yeah, and she's been dominating for so many years. Is someone who, whenever I saw her fighting, I just expected the W. I really did. Mm-hmm. She was beaten. They've got a rematch. There's some bad blood. Mm-hmm. Predictions?
It's interesting because it almost felt like Braekhus got too comfortable at a certain point. Like as you said, expecting the W. I think it became almost second nature to just expect Braekhus to just get a W. Kind of like we expect Clarissa, really, But I think maybe she got a little bit too comfortable. And in McCaskill, you had somebody who was hungry, who had accomplished, was a solid contender, even regardless of before it's not like McCaskill came out of nowhere. McCaskill was always a top fighter. But I think she still had that hunger in her, too. She had a hunger that Braekhus maybe has lost, because having had so much. So I'm curious to see if this rematch, if Braekhus can summon up a hunger of past times, of the times when you're looking to still cement your legacy as opposed to already having your legacy. And so we'll see. But I think that mental attitude is the most important thing going into this rematch, because I think McCaskill still has that mentality. I question if Braekhus has it. We'll see.
Another rematch, Estrada versus Chocolatito. It's been a long time coming. Yeah. Both kind of on different trajectories now. Before the momentum was all with Chocolatito. This time round, it may not be. The Estrada has beaten the man that has beaten Chocolatito twice. Yeah. So this is a very interesting one. Again, does Chocolatito have anything left in the tank?
Yeah, and also, does he have any left in the tank? But more so, does he see the pros, the positives of getting this win again? It's a guy he's beaten, but now this guy's beating the guys that beat the guy that beat him. So does he value it as important as he should, or is he looking at it like, okay, this is a guy I've beaten, I know what I've got to do, or is he seeing it like, okay, this guy just beat the guy that beat me a couple times. I need to really assess what I'm fighting here, because it may not be the same Estrada that I beat before. I don't know. Because the mental edge, as I call it, the edge is very important to have going into these kind of fights. Without that edge, you leave yourself exposed to possible dangers.
We're gonna get a prediction.
You're gonna put me on the spot.
That's what I came for.
All right. You know what? I'm gonna go with my guy Chocolatito. I'm gonna go with my guy Chocolatito. It might not be his moment. He might be underdog this time around, but I'm gonna go with him.
I would love
Roman Gonzalez.
I would love it to be Roman Gonzalez, but I do think that momentum's a big thing in boxing. I feel like we're gonna see. Yeah. I don't want to say that Chocolatito's on the slide, but I feel like we may see it.
No, I see a lot of your points. I've met Chocolatito a couple of times. I like the guy. So I like him as well. I'm probably going with my heart more than my head, but
I'm going to do both. I'm going to go with my heart wants Chocolatito to win because I love him. Mm-hmm. But my head says Estrada's going to win.
And that's not to say Estrada. Maybe we like Estrada too if we meet him, but we never met him. So what are we going to do?
Yeah, exactly. I'm also, probably controversially, or maybe not, but I'm also going for a Braekhus win. Okay. Just for next week when I'm right, hopefully.
Just so they can have a rubber match and do it 3 times.
Exactly. Right. Anyway, that is all we have time for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Stay locked to Boxer, stay locked to Mouthpiece. We'll be bringing you all the boxing news every week, every Tuesday. Yes, people, I am Savage Dan.
I'm Paulie Malignaggi.
You are watching Mouthpiece, the official boxer podcast.
We are two of the most knowledgeable, two of the most charismatic, biggest personality guys in boxing, and we are two of the coolest cats talking about the sport today.